A massive welcome to week 5 of the Get Inspired Body Transformation. So you're nearly halfway there now. As always, starting off, if you haven't already sent me it, please let me know what your weekly weigh-in is. So I want to know how much weight you've lost, whether you've lost anything, whether you've maybe put on a little bit of weight, anything like that, please let me know. I keep a track of your results as well. So if you haven't sent me it, please do so. Starting off then, get your pen and paper ready, and we're doing our cheers, challenges and future recommendation as well. So on your sheet of paper, starting off with obviously the things that we do well now. So what 2 things have you done really well this week that you're proud of? So again, is it stuff like, have you been drinking enough water? Have you maybe resisted your favourite food? Have you been doing well with your portion sizes? Stuff like that. So what 2 things have you done well this week that you're proud of? So pause this now and get those written down. So you should now have on your sheet of paper 2 things that you're proud of this week, so 2 things that you've done really well. Now what I want you to do is write down 2 things that you've struggled with this week. So again, it doesn't have to be 2 things. If it's only 1 thing or if there's nothing you can think of, then absolutely great. But just have a think about what those things are that you maybe have struggled with that have maybe limited your weight loss for this week. So any 2 things, pause this now and write those down. Okay, so you should now have on your sheet of paper 2 things that you're really proud of and 2 things that you've really struggled with for this week. So what are you going to focus on improving for this week? So what 1 thing are you really going to make sure that you do this week that ensures that you have a good week and lose some body fat? So what are you really going to focus on this week? So write it down. What are you going to improve on this week? So pause this now and write that down. Okay, so you should now have on your sheet of paper 2 things that you've done well this week and that you're really proud of, 2 things that you've struggled with this week, and then what you're really going to focus on improving for this coming week. And keep going up. Like I said, we're nearly halfway there now. And what some of you might find is maybe you lost a couple of pounds in the first week, and now you're at a stage where you're losing 1 or 2 pounds every week. But that is still absolutely brilliant, and that is what we should be aiming for. So I always recommend 1 to 2 pounds per week of weight loss. Any more than that, great, it's a bonus, but that's really where you should be aiming, that 1 to 2 pounds per week, and just consistent keeping with it, because that's what, like I said, it's what this course is all about. It's making sure you make those little changes every single week, keep improving every single week, and then before you know it, it'll become a habit and a lifestyle change. So just to summarise from last week then, if you remember, it was all about carbs and carb portions and stuff like that. So your cupped hand determines your carb portions, like the picture below. We use divide by 5 as a great way to visualise the amount of sugar that a carbohydrate breaks down to. So if you've got 30 grams of carbohydrate, you know that you divide that by 5 and it gives you how many tablespoons there are there, so 6 tablespoons. And then we know that the amount of sugar we should be aiming per meal is 5 to 6 teaspoons. Now when you read a nutritional label, that doesn't mean you can have 5 to 6 teaspoons of sugar. That means what we're looking for is about 30 grams of total carbohydrate, and then we divide that by 5. So you divide the total carbohydrate, not the sugar, and that gives the amount. And it's all about balancing blood sugar levels. So that was to give you an idea of basically how much blood sugar goes in per meal, because our body only knows 1 thing to do with carbs, and that's turn it into glucose. So this week is all about the 3 macronutrients. So we're going to have a look at carbohydrates, proteins and fats. So what we're going to have a look at, what are they, why we eat them, and also where we get them from as well. So your first task, what I want you to do is on a fresh piece of paper or the same piece of paper where you've got space, I want you to write down the answers for all of these. So what do you know about carbohydrates? So it was a big week last week in terms of balancing your blood sugar level, so you should have learned quite a lot about carbohydrates from that. So what do you know about carbohydrates that you learned from last week? And stuff you should be thinking of is, what does GI stand for? So what does glycemic index stand for? What does GL stands for? So what does the glycemic load stand for? And what do you divide carbs by to find the number of teaspoons of sugar? Are vegetables carbohydrates and are fruits carbohydrates? That's the sort of stuff you should be thinking out. So write down everything you know about carbohydrates. Pause this now and get that done. Take 5 minutes and write down literally everything you can think of. Okay, so you should now have on your sheet of paper everything that you can think about carbohydrates. So, like I say, what does glycemic index stand for? What does glycemic load stand for? What do you divide carbs by to find the number? So I just told you that's 5. So glycemic index is the speed of which basically the food gets turned into sugar, so the carbohydrate gets turned into sugar. Glycemic load is the amount that it affects it by. And vegetables and fruit are both carbohydrates, which is often something that people overlook. So carbohydrates, what actually are they then? So there's maybe 3 different types. So they've got sugar, starch and fibre. So they're all pretty similar in terms of their chemical bonds and their structure, which is why they get put into carbohydrate. I wouldn't worry about them too much in terms of what the differences between them are, but remember your glycemic index and remember your glycemic load as well, because they will make a big difference. You've obviously got basically carbs that you should be having on a regular basis and carbs that maybe you should be having on a much more infrequent basis, and some carbs you should be avoiding at all. And that's what we're going to have a look at in a minute. So again, what are carbohydrates and why do we actually eat them? So carbohydrates are basically our immediate energy source. They're the primary source for your body. That's what your body loves to use. And 1 gram of carbohydrate will provide us with about 4 calories of energy. When we exercise, we use more carbohydrates for energy, and our brain literally uses tons and tons of carbohydrates for energy, glucose for energy. So the best time to eat carbohydrates is always after you exercise, because after you exercise, basically your body breaks down those carbohydrates and uses them as immediate energy, so your glycogen levels are lower in the liver and in the muscles as well. And when you eat straight after exercising, what happens is, as opposed to say you overate carbohydrates in the morning and it turned to blood glucose and then the insulin response and it turned into fat, what would happen is your body, rather than storing it as fat, would replenish those worked muscles, and it's important to do that to make sure that you recover well as well. So that's why you can always have a little bit more carbohydrates after you've exercised. But again, it should be about making those right choices and not having a massive amount. So the more you exercise and the more intense exercise, obviously the more uptake of carbohydrates you're going to have. But in general, the problems that people have is a sedentary lifestyle actually requires less carbohydrates, and more people now are working office jobs or jobs when they're in the car, and more people have a sedentary lifestyle than a while ago. So carbohydrates are becoming not such an essential thing, certainly not in the amounts that we're having. So it really is no big surprise that most people are consuming too much energy, considering the prevalence of our jobs nowadays, which like I say, are pretty much all sedentary. So now a classification generally is a sedentary person is someone who takes less than 10,000 steps per day. So now most people have got iPhones or Fitbits and stuff like that. So that's the minimum steps that we should be aiming for to making sure that we're not sedentary. So like I mentioned to you before, 3 different types of carbohydrates, but what I want you to do now is on your sheet of paper, I want you to split it down into 3 sections, so avoid, limit and recommend. So split down to these, and I want you to butt into stuff that you think. So actually go into the specific carbohydrates now, so stuff like white bread, sweet potato, baked potatoes, whole grains, stuff like that. I want you to write down all the ones that you think you should avoid, all the things that you think you should limit, and all the ones that you would generally recommend. So again, pause this now and take 5 minutes and write that down. So all the ones you'd avoid, limit, and recommend. So you should now have on your sheet of paper, split it into 3 sections and wrote down everything that you think you should avoid, every carbohydrate that you think you should limit, so having frequently, and every one that you think you should recommend, either have with every meal or every other meal, or particularly after you exercise. So let's have a look then. So the ones I would put as avoid are crisps, cakes, biscuits, whites. And the reason for that is most of those are with high fat as well. So you're looking at a massive amount of energy dumped on you as well, sort of fat energy and the carbohydrate energy as well. Most of those are really low in protein, so it really does affect your blood sugar as well. And whites as well, again, it's that glycemic index. It's the fact that they don't have much fibre with them. Most white, particularly stuff like white bread, white carbohydrates, have had that goodness removed, and you're basically being sold a crap. So that's why I believe that white breads, white carbohydrates, white pastas, white spaghetti, stuff like that should be avoided. In terms of limiting, and what I mean by limit is just making sure that you're having them, but you're having the right amount of them. So and not every single day. So pasta, rice, cereals, brown bread, stuff like that. And recommended fruit, vegetables, and whole grains. So they're the ones that you should be having every single day. And there's numerous benefits to them, not just for weight loss, but all sorts of other health benefits as well. So making sure that you are having enough of those. So obviously with fruit and veg, it's a minimum of 5 per day. If you're not having that, please make sure that you are. It will make a huge difference to your health. And it'll also make you feel fuller for longer as well. So they're the ones that I recommend avoiding, limiting, and recommending too. So now we're going to have a look at protein, and I want you to write down every single thing that you know about protein. So what is it, where do we get it from, and why do we need it? They're the primary things we're looking at. So write down what you think you know about protein now. So take 5 minutes and do that. Pause this now. So you should have on your sheet of paper all you know about protein. So what is it, where do we get it from, and why do we need it? So let's have a look. So proteins are basically a collection of something called amino acids. So they fall into 2 categories, essential and non-essential. So the non-essential are the ones that the body can basically produce adequate amount of, and the essential are the ones that the body cannot produce. In terms of functions of protein, you're looking at growth and repair being one of the primary ones and one of the better known ones. So it's be better, be stronger, be quicker. If you're exercising, you can recover quicker. When you do exercise, you're damaging the muscles, and the muscles have got to recover. And what happens is the body then recovers them bigger and better and stronger so that you don't damage them again. And having adequate amount of protein will improve this. It's got loads of other benefits as well, so it produces antibodies for immune system. If you remember the hormone glucagon from last week, protein brings out glucagon, whereas if you remember carbohydrates causes an increase in insulin. It produces enzymes that are required for many chemical reactions in the body. It provides a component for hormones as well, so for your body to produce the adequate amount of hormones, and it allows a component for basically transport of proteins from haemoglobin as well. And it's not just that, it's also a source fuel when your muscle glycogen levels are low. So when your body's running out of carbohydrates, what your body will do is it'll then rob your muscles unless you've got adequate amount of protein. And you need a certain amount. Whereas with carbohydrates, you can do fasting, and fats, you can do a certain amount. With carbohydrates, with protein, you really do need to be having protein with every single meal, because you have something called, like I said, the amino acids, and you have something called branched chain amino acids, and there needs to be a certain amount of those going around your bloodstream at any one time. Think of it like a pool or like a sink. And if you're filling that sink up and it's got a little bit of a plug missing, because what's happening is the branched chain amino acids are completely going. If you turn that tap off, then eventually those branched chain amino acids and the water in your sink is going to run out, and then what has to happen is your body has to basically do something called catabolism, and it has to break down your own muscle stores to produce those branched chain amino acids. So make sure you're having protein with every meal. So that's why one of the reasons as well why protein is so important. And again, that's why we eat them. So it encourages a breakdown of fat in the body by, again, stimulating the hormone glucagon. It encourages growth and repair of muscle tissue. It makes you feel fuller for longer as well. So again, and one of the primary reasons it does that is because, again, if you remember that glycemic index, when you combine carbohydrate with protein, the protein actually slows down the digestion. So what happens is that the carbohydrate, maybe take it from a high glycemic index to a medium, and again from a medium to a low. So it actually affects the digestion rate because of that. And also you actually require the body to use it as energy to digest them. So it's per 100 calories of protein that you digest, about 27 calories of that is used for the digestive system to break it down. And in short, essentially it's protein that will help muscles develop, and at the expense of fat as well. So the higher amount of muscle you have, the more calories you burn. The higher amount of muscle you have, the more protein you'll need. And protein is essential for so many different things, like I've already mentioned: energy, hormones, skin, enzymes, and the immune system as well. In terms of where you can get them from, you can get them from loads and loads of different things, but generally I'd say the ideal sources come from a mix of lean, fresh meat, fish, nuts, eggs, lentils, and beans. So they're what you should be looking at getting your protein from. So it's also found in dairy products, such as cheese and milk, but again, they tend to be high in fats and carbohydrates as well. So they can be unnatural saturated fats and stuff like that. So you need to be careful and limit the amount of dairy products that you get your source of protein from. So now we're going to have a look at fats then. So what I want you to do is write down everything you know about fats. So again, why do we eat them, where do we get them from, and what they actually do in the body. So again, take 5 minutes now and write that down. So you should now have on your sheet of paper what you know about fats, why we eat them, where do we get them from, and what do we do with the body. And if you're not sure, that's absolutely fine. Hopefully you'll know after this. So what actually are there? So when we talk about fats, we're talking about something called lipids, which come in two basically forms. So we've got fats, which are solid at room temperature, and oils, which are lipids, which are liquid at room temperature. And they can basically be classified into 4 different types. So you've probably heard of most of them. Monounsaturated, saturated, and polyunsaturated are the ones we mainly get our diet from. Trans fats are the ones that really should be avoided. They've been linked to many carcinogenic effects, so cancer, that sort of stuff. So avoid trans fats, but the good news is most things have had to all the trans fats removed, particularly the man-made trans fats. It used to be a case of, chip shops and fast food restaurants and stuff like that would pump it full of trans fats, but now it's illegal to do so. So you're looking at monounsaturated fats, saturated and polyunsaturated fats. So why we actually eat them? Fats really are essential for energy and the formation of body structure. If you're getting it wrong, there's a ton of health benefits for eating fats. And when most people try and lose weight, fats are the first thing that actually go, when in reality it's a case of fats don't make you fat. unless you're having far too much of them and combining them again with a large amount of carbohydrates. They also improve hormone production, vitamins, and the protection of your healthy internal organs as well. Probably for me, the most important fats are the healthy omega-3s, and the reason why they should be included in our diet is because most people have poor quality diets, or the Western diet now is, when we're looking at something called omega-3 to omega-6, so they're two different types of fats, that ratio, we were basically evolved on a ratio of 1 to 1. Now, the ideal ratio should be anywhere between 1 to 1 and 1 to 4. So 1 omega-3 to 1 omega-6, or 4 omega-6, and it should be anywhere in between there. However, currently the Western diet is about 1 to 20, so 1 omega-3 fat gram per 6 of omega-6, which is such a huge difference in terms of what actually is our optimum. And if you think about omega-3, the health benefits of omega-3 is, one of the main ones is it's anti-inflammatory, whereas omega-6 is pro-inflammatory, so they do pretty much the opposite. So what you've got is your body's used to being in equilibrium, in balance, but now what actually happens is, because we're at a ratio of 20 omega-6 fats to 1 omega-3, your body's actually pro-inflammatory, and that's where a lot of illnesses and a lot of pain and stuff like that is coming from. So if we can bring that ratio back down to where it should be, and you increase your omega-3 healthy fats, then that's when we can really make effect to improving our health and our anti-inflammatory effects as well. So where do your actually fats come from? So again, looking at omega-3, we're looking at protein sources, and we're primarily looking at fish as well, and nuts. So salmon, cod, tuna, we're looking at walnuts, healthy nuts, stuff like that. Other good sources, like I say, are generally meat. So most people think of stuff like eggs as being sort of saturated fats, but actually there's about 48% of an egg yolk has been polyunsaturated. So again, looking at omega-3, so there's different types of fats in different single things. So again, we're looking at healthy meats, fish, nuts, oils such as olive oil, avocado, coconut oil, flaxseed, avocado oil. Again, cooking oils and oils that can be drizzled on top of stuff like salad. So I'd say olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil. Add those as well. So you'd be looking at about a teaspoon or a thumbprint to the size, and they're the ones that you should be cooking with as well. So that's what you really want to focus your time on, is making sure you're getting those nice healthy sources of fats. And the best thing about them is, not only are they great sources of fats, all those things on this that you can get your fats from are also great sources of nutrition as well, so high in vitamins. So yeah, make sure you're having enough omega-3, and if you don't think you are, then that's where supplementation could definitely get involved. So just to summarise from this week then, looking at carbohydrates, we're looking at, where possible, choose natural carbohydrates like vegetables and fruits. So remember, they're the ones that should be recommended, and whole grains as well for the fibre, because they've typically got low glycemic index and low glycemic load. They're good for hydration, and they include a massive amount of vitamins and minerals too. In terms of portion control with your carbohydrates, remember, using your hand, it's an easy way, and avoid those that are high in GL and GI combination. In terms of protein, choose lean meats and fish as your protein sources, include nuts and eggs as secondary protein sources, and limit some dairy as well. So a lot of people get a high amount of their protein source from dairy, and it's again high in carbs and high in fats. And fats, choose lean meats and fish for healthy fat, include natural saturated fats in your diet, and choose stuff like avocados and coconuts over processed meats, dairy, margarines, vegetable oils. And just again to add something with this, what a lot of people do, and the reason why a lot of people gain weight is because people either avoid carbohydrates or they avoid fats. But what tends to happen is they end up having a large amount of both. So the most addictive foods are ones that are high in carbs and high in fats. You could eat a really high carbohydrate diet and high protein diet and really low fat diet, and you could lose weight. Again, conversely, you could eat a really low carbohydrate diet, high protein diet, and high fat diet and lose weight. But the problems occur when people have a low protein, high carbohydrate, and high fat diet. And that's because there's a massive amount of calories plus the insulin all equals basically your body storing it as fat. So don't be scared of fats, but just make sure if you're having fats that your carbohydrates are not too big in terms of the serving size that you're giving yourself. You're making sure you stick to those right portion sizes. So that's the summarise from that. Any questions, as always, please feel free to ask. You have my email address. Just send me an email, and I check them every single day, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And this week's challenge, what I want you to do is take part in a new exercise class. So I sometimes get emails from people saying I don't have a gym membership or anything like that. Nowadays, we've got an amazing thing called YouTube, and you can basically go on there. So if you want to go on there and type in circuit class, bodyweight class, type in Zumba class, Bokwa, stuff like that, you can basically find any sort of class, and you can do it at home as well. So please try one of those this week. Again, if exercising isn't an option for you, then that's no problem at all. But for those that it is, that's your challenge for this week. Take part in your exercise class. And for those that exercise isn't an option, your challenge is to keep doing what you're doing and keep making sure you're having breakfast every day, you're drinking the right amount of water, and then you're making sure you go for maybe your walks or stuff like that as well. So that's it from me. I will catch up with you all next week when we'll be officially halfway through. And again, if you haven't sent me your weights, please do. And have a great week. Bye-bye.